afraid of my heart, 'cause it feels all at once, like falling apart while falling in love. Brave in the dark, then brave in the sun. And when I get down, baby, I get real low, reaching for fountains that offer no flow, breaking new ground, ignoring what's sold. But I'm tired of spinning out of control. There is a spark of hope that's fighting in my veins. I'm giving all I know to make it light in the flame. And though it's getting cold, trying to hide from the rain, I'm living on a spark of hope. And for a long time, if you asked how I was, I couldn't reply. Without subordinate clauses, tempted to lie, but settled for pause. And I think I'm getting better just because there is a spark of hope that's fighting in my veins. I'm giving all I know to make it light in the flame. And though it's getting cold, trying to hide from the rain, I'm living on a spark of hope. From the hollow shadow that is pulling at my reins, to the psycho babble that is feeding me my pain, do I have to grapple just to step out of this rut? 'Cause I really need a spark to be enough. There is a spark of hope that's fighting in my veins. I'm giving all I know to make it light in the flame. And though it's getting cold, trying to hide from the rain, I'm living on a spark of hope. There is a spark of hope. I'm giving all I know. And though it's getting cold, trying to hide from the rain, I'm living on a spark of hope. I'm living on a spark of hope. I'm living on a spark of hope.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katie Gideon, and I will be the on-camera facilitator for this social, dialing in from a now rainy Edinburgh, Scotland, but I am so glad to be here. And as a reminder, I will be the only one on camera. I will be the only one having to show my lovely face. And that means you all get to get comfy. So grab your April journal. Grab all of the things you want to use to write with. So the fun pencils, colored pencils, stickers, washi tape, all of those things. You guys get comfy, grab your morning beverage of choice. And we are going to be spending the next hour plus to work on our monthly setup. As a reminder, if you don't already have your April journal, do not worry. Gonna be one of those days. Don't worry, you can grab a sticky note or some spare paper, previous journals, and kind of jot down some things. Don't let that inhibit you from participating. I am already starting to see some of our returning socialers in the chat. Welcome. It is always good to see each and every one of you. And I am really excited to set up another month with all of you. If this is your first social, just double check if you want to share with the larger Sonder fam in the group. Double check that your chat is set to everyone. The default is host and panelists, which comes to just myself and my amazing co-host facilitator, Maya, who you'll see in the chat. She is dialing in from Colorado. So we will be there to answer any of your questions, but usually not, usually no one wants to talk to just us. You're here to talk to everybody else as well. So just make sure that it is set to everyone. And if you haven't attended a social in a while, usually these monthly socials, the chat is quite busy. So don't forget that you can always click on a message, pause it, and manually scroll through it. Also, if the chat is too much, you can turn it off. If I am too much, you can mute me. If the music is too much, mute it. But we're here just to use what you need in order to set up your journal. So this is a way to get inspiration and set aside time to do so, but there is no due date. There is no responsibility. No one is going to come over your shoulder and check to see how far you've made it in your journal and your setup. So just take that little bit of pressure off yourself, work through what you want to work through. And again, as Maya just put in, there's no right or wrong way to set it up. There is no right or wrong way to participate in these socials either. But as always, be kind and courteous to yourself and others. No promotion or spam. Respect everyone's privacy. No hate speech or bullying. Limit repetitive product and accessory questions. Though we do like to talk about stickers and all the things that are fun. They do not want to be hoarded. They want to be used. They want to be put prominently somewhere. And then as always, while Maya and I have some information, we will most likely redirect your customer care inquiries to our team, hello@silkandsonder.com. And same thing with the products. We do have a lot of newer products out that we're still in kind of beta and testing mode. So if you have any questions about those, you can certainly put those in the chat, but we just don't want it to be too much of a distraction for why we're here, which is to set it up. But we'll talk through some of those as we go. And then as always, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community. That's why these are so special, but you are responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. I know that overall, I can't believe we're already setting up for April. That's wild to me. But it also means if you had a March and you're ready for March to be gone, we are glad that that is the case. We want to provide some support as well as celebrate those wins. But if you need to add some of those mental barriers, mental boundaries, if you know, when we do the reflections and the intention page, if that's just not where your head is at the moment, take what you need from that. Shut the journal, just listen to the music, or maybe it is one of those, you work on it a little bit, you work on some of it, you get some inspiration, but it's more of you don't quite know what you don't know, or what you don't know, what you don't want. But we are here and we're glad that you've come exactly as you are. So, new month, new theme. And what I love about this particular theme is the simple alliteration of it. To me, that's like an added bonus for each month when the theme matches the first letter of the month, because that's just how my brain works. So I am excited for an April and authenticity, or even an authentic April, because authenticity April doesn't quite roll off the tongue as well, but I still like the matching A's. They make me happy. They make me smile. But on the flip side, I find authenticity a really tricky theme. And I think part of that is just because we are now in this like social media world where you can heavily curate what people know about you, and that kind of duality of what, you get up, you put on your smile or you put on your mask and you go to work and you have your work personality or your home personality, or your personalities around your family or your personalities around your friends. But having to knit all that together, to me, can be really overwhelming, because I was telling Maya is that I'm a huge bookworm. I have a lot of different facets to my personality that I love, but I consider like uniquely weird. Parents call me kind of nerd on a pretty daily basis. And so I always, in the back of my mind, for the fact that I am 38 years old, but the mean girls from high school are still in the back of my head, to the point that I do not want to give them that much of a platform. But I always think about all of those things. Like if I were to post something on Instagram or say something or do something or sign up for something, it's always that teeny tiny little voice was like, well, then you're not going to get invited to any other things. So it's wild. It's wild that I let it determine so much of it, but I cannot help but incorporate that. And is it one of those things that it constantly maybe prevents me from being in my true authentic self? Absolutely. But that's where it ties into this little quote with stop worrying about being weird and just being weirder. Because it's not that we do all those things, it's just so much of it becomes defining. And it's like, I love I love to go see concerts and shows, and I love to dress the theme. And it's all those type of things that it's just like those little things that make sense if you really know me actually, versus just like the superficial knowing or what you think you know. And I just all the things that I have lost sleep over it, I think just comes back in this whole thing. And I think that's going to be my theme for sure this month is absolutely wanting to be authentically me, but still adding a filter, still adding some sort of abridged version, you know, some sort of like appropriate response to things versus what you really want to say. And it looks like in the chat, a lot of you in a similar form or fashion. And so I think that's really going to be a little bit more of the I need to accept it because I have. I live absolutely authentically to myself in my four little walls. I entertain myself beyond anything. I think I'm the funniest, hilarious, coolest person that I know. But to then kind of fall so short in some situation really kind of hurts my feelings a bit. And I know it's absolutely within my control. So with that, I also recommend reading Mayha's letter on page 2 to kind of get another perspective on authenticity. And that is what I like about all these socials. Not only do we get to get kind of the facilitator's thoughts on authenticity, which I think opens really great dialogue, but other couple of folks there. So I feel like with that like kind of theme of where my headspace is with authenticity, it makes sense the things that stuck out to me in the letter, which was embrace renewal for me this year is back to basics, back to fundamentals. That's kind of my theme of the year because so much of it, I was like, I've gone through a lot of change, a lot of adjustments, all good, but I still need to come back to some of those confidence things, as well as the like, I have the opportunity to do some really cool nerdy stuff and being able to kind of continue to be okay with that in my head. And then obviously the showing up fully. That is really, like I said, where I kind of spiraled down this hole that I know there are instances where I do not show up fully. I am not giving the full story. And like I said, that hurts me only in my own head, but it's still, I find that one just as painful, if not more so than some of the other instances of like, yeah, people aren't always going to like me. That's fine. But the fact that I am kind of preventing myself from doing it, I'm my biggest hindrance, which again, I know we're our biggest worst enemy. That's not new, but I feel like this can be a constant theme for me. And then making sure that we're setting aside time to unlock that authenticity. And I feel like at this point, a lot of us know who we are, what defines us, and what are the quirks that make us function. And I think that it's more of now finding the space and then also realizing that it's not a destination. The end goal is not to be our most authentic of authenticness. The end goal is the journey along the way and putting these into practice to where that little voice in my head eventually goes silent, or it just doesn't bother me as much, or it can be that kind of spin around of like, I don't think it bothers me anymore, or you can't help but laugh. That's like, why did I care so much? So I think that is maybe more the point that I'm at when it comes to unlocking that authenticity is I don't need to find it. I know what it looks like. I just need to figure myself out so that I can continue to do it. So with that in mind, here's going to be our agenda for the rest of the social. We're going to dive a little bit into that authenticity theme with the monthly acrostic poem. And don't worry if poetry is not your thing or if it's not your thing right now, we've got a couple other suggestions that I know Maya came up with. And then we'll also go through our March reflections, which is our opportunity to look back on the month that we have in some sort of lens that we get to choose. And then we'll move into our intentions and then supporting those with our mood and habit trackers. So turn to a fresh page in your journal. This one, sometimes it's printed, sometimes it's not. In this particular case, it is not. And so you're going to write authenticity down on the side or kind of find an empty space. And you can start thinking of 12 words or phrases that you associate with authenticity or authenticity. I was going to say now I can't say authentic. Ooh. So once you do that, you can then kind of form these in as like inspirational, motivational, and you can do it as a single word or you can do it as a full poem. And you can also get really creative in a sense of you don't have to use the very first word with the very first letter. It can be kind of whatever you need it to use. Maybe the T, the third letter is a little bit more of what you need. And that's where I love that you can play with the capitalization of it. But the big thing is just kind of brainstorm this. You don't have to edit it too much. I think that's what's really fun is these kind of the initial thoughts with how you feel about authenticity. And here are a couple examples. One is the one that was posted in Sonder Club. And then the other one is AI. You can always get some inspiration, especially if you're using the 24/7 coach. Her name is Jenny. I know she has provided some inspiration for folks of like how do they kind of tailor this to more them. But the one on the right is definitely AI generated. They got real sappy and it was quite fun to kind of go through and explore. I think authenticity, they were wanting some full-blown romance novels. So it was really fun to see. And then at the same time, maybe authenticity is a little bit trickier for you to connect with. So the word cloud in the top left are other words for authentic and authenticity. So maybe you can find some of those or use those as a little bit of an inspiration. And then as always, again, if you don't want to do the acrostic poem, you do have this really nice space on page 3 where you can kind of put in some of these thoughts of how you feel about authenticity. And then same thing, if the poem isn't for you, you can certainly write a letter saying goodbye to March and April. The examples I have are definitely a little bit older, but I really enjoyed that when I was coming out of January to February. Also did one February to March. And again, highlighting that definition on page 3, or you can completely spin it a little bit different. Think about a character in a book, a movie, a real person that you admire their authenticity, write about what makes them authentic to you, or even just other kind of metaphors or similes, kind of those type of expressions for there you can go. So I am going to stop talking. I am going to let you all work on this, but I would love to hear your thoughts on authenticity, especially with the new theme, new month, even if it is as simple as like you're absolutely here for the alliteration, or if this is also going to be maybe a trickier theme for you this month. We will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I loved already seeing some of the kind of thoughts and feelings around authenticity. And I struggle with the ones that have the multiple same letter repetition. You all are amazing, and it's always so great to get inspiration here, but also fully understanding that it is first thing in the morning in some places, and maybe the energy is not there and ready to embrace this. But that's what's so fun about this particular exercise, I think, is you have the entire month to continue to build this relationship to the theme. So you can always come back to this. And with the longer letters, I think it's something you can kind of incorporate. Maybe you do a couple a week, and by the end of it, you kind of have this full one. And at the same time, I also think you could relate to excuse me, you can relate to take a page out of Bailey's book, I feel like, as a facilitator, with some of the weekly pages that we do, that sometimes it's better to use certain things as a summary. So maybe your acrostic poem is something that you want to do as more of a summary of how much you've even learned or grown, or maybe kind of revisit the acrostic at the end of the month as well. So that's where we say there are no due dates on these things. So you don't have to do it now, you don't have to do it later, you don't have to do it at all, or you can come back and kind of revisit it in different forms. So now we're going to move into the monthly planner portions of this as we transition from March to April. And so we're going to start with the March reflections, and this is on page 8 in your April journal. So this is our opportunity to look at the wins, challenges, favorite moments, and maybe build some of those stepping stones or starting points with that start, stop, and continue to help us as we then build our intentions for the month of April. So I know that some people have maybe not had the best March, or I feel like it's always maybe the end of the month that doesn't always end on high fashion in that regard. So this is an opportunity to reflect on your wins, something that you did, something that made you smile. And just because there are 4 lines there does not mean you have to come up with 4 things. Maybe it's one thing, maybe you had run really epic thing, but certainly encourage you to find at least one thing with each of these and acknowledge a challenge. I have found that the challenges tend to be more mental and emotional stumbling blocks than like actual like failures, I think, so to speak. And so that's what I have always found is like a really interesting thing, is that my wins are all things. My challenges tend to be mental and emotional. And my favorite moments are when I have been authentically me and doing exactly what I want, embracing kind of my hobbies and those type of things there. So I feel like it's been a consistent trend that I love, but seeing them in kind of this kind of laid out framework certainly helps to then pull those into the start, stop, and continue. And as we always say, this is not, this isn't a test. You don't have to memorize these things. You can use your calendar, your other journal, all of those things to kind of come up with these. Your phone's a great place because we do tend to take pictures of things that we really like and enjoy. And then the start, stop, and continue, I think, is a really valuable portion of this because I do like those actionable and tangible things. And so the idea of maybe start, stopping, and continue, what I think has been really nice is someone has added the why. Why do you want to start, stop, and continue something? And then how are you going to start, stop, and continue it? Because you can take those whys and kind of turn them into your intentions. And then you can take the hows and incorporate those into your mood tracker or your habit tracker or your weekly pages. I am always a big fan when past selves help our future selves. So future me loves this idea that it kind of goes to help where you put in that thought. And as much as I want to say I have a pretty solid memory, sometimes it is quite fleeting. So to be able to kind of add those more kind of weight to those start, stop, and continues, I have found them a little bit more easy to grab onto and move forward with. But maybe that is not your style. Maybe it's just more of a summary of this is what I liked, this is what I did, and this is how we're going to keep doing it. Same thing with the stickers, maybe it's more of a sticker vibe. Maybe it is kind of larger ideas. I'm a big on honest expectations and realistic changes. I am a simple and small steps forward starting, and then stop procrastination and delaying things. I am definitely still a procrastinator across all different areas of my life. It's something I acknowledge and I work on, but it still happens. And then the one at the bottom I really like is that they focused on 3 different things. So they wanted to start a new morning routine. They wanted to stop coworkers from distracting them, and then they wanted to continue good housekeeping. And so they broke that down into how they were going to frame those into each of the weeks. So there was each one of those things. So maybe you want to focus on either one specific thing or a couple of different specific things. But either way, there is no right or wrong way to do this, but there is certain power with the power of pen to paper to just kind of reflect on the previous month, whether it was good, bad, or something in between. And that's again something that we can look at as this is what happened, this is what I'm taking from it, and this is how I'm going to move forward. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to play some music. And I would love to celebrate the wins with you, acknowledge some of those challenges, as well as get excited for what we can start, stop, and continue as we set up this particular month. We'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. Loved seeing some of the wins, as well as just some of the conversations around grief and kind of reflecting on maybe the not so happy moments in our lives. And just reading it brought me certainly a comfort of knowing that I'm not alone. Because certainly what I've always find challenging, I have no idea what it is about this time of year. I don't know if it's the flowers or just that type of thing, but find myself certainly thinking of people who I've lost, and it always kind of chokes me up a little bit. And I always am really surprised when it kind of sneaks up on me. And so that's when I'm always like, I wonder why. And sometimes I feel like it's there to continue to remind us, as well as like these are always journeys, the good, bad, and everything in between is a constant journey. There is no end date to any of these things. And so I am always more interested of why has it kind of come up, and to kind of sit and think, and I want to kind of tease apart, why did I automatically think of it? What made me think of it? Because then I get a little bit, I feel better about having the answer of like, why was it because I had made a decision and it was either like a support. I feel like it's one of those why did it come up? I find the brain a really fascinating thing in the thought process there. So I always want to find out the why. I think it's a little annoying sometimes, but I always want to know the why. So I feel like that kind of distracts me a little bit from the kind of maybe pure emotions there. Because I'm too busy fixated on the why instead of kind of embracing some of those things. But um whew, I feel like it's one of those things that it can be tricky, and this page always can be tricky, but I always appreciate being able to fill it out with all of you here as well. So with that, we are now going to move into the intentions. And so this is a way to kind of embrace, and I loved that someone, I think it was Carla, that brought up the fact that she was going to repurpose the start, stop, and continue with the I feel and I need. And I see Nathania in the chat because she's one of those that I certainly credit with the elegant I feel and therefore I need, because I think that's such a great way of looking at the April intentions of what do you need this month. And I know if you've come to my weekly setups, that tends to be a constant question that I like everybody to ask themselves all the time now, is what do you need this month? And sometimes it's embracing that maybe you want to tap into the authenticity of this month's theme, focus on maybe one particular area. Maybe it's a combination of song and lyrics. I have always found this really helpful because I have Spotify always open, playlists always going. And so I will use a particular artist, usually pull some of their songs as kind of my intentions, as how it's going to define my intentions. So then when it shows up on shuffle, I always come back and know to check in with it, because I feel like it's the universe's way of saying, hey, remember when you wrote this down? You should probably revisit it. And then, so how do you want to feel this month in each particular area? And when in doubt, you can use stickers, colors, imagery, all of those things for that type of inspiration. And again, you can pull that start, stop, and continue from over there. And it's always fun to add, like I said, I love a good theme. So here are this month's themes, if you want to embrace some of those. National Poetry Month, National Volunteer Month, and then a lot of focus on maybe ways that we can help. So I think it's quite appropriate that the volunteer month falls with some of those other vulnerable situations that people find themselves in. And just because we have the 6 listed, the spiritual health, personal life, physical health, key relationships, money management, and professional goals, you can always repurpose those going back to what do you need. Maybe for spiritual health, it's more of a mental health. Maybe you want to focus on connection. Maybe it's your authentic health. Maybe instead of personal life, it's your creative life, your home life. Maybe it's personal fun. And don't worry, I won't throw in authenticity in each of these sections, because this is one of those good themes that can definitely be sprinkled across all of these. Maybe instead of physical health, it's your mental health, heart health, brain health, something that you're specifically focusing on. Maybe you want to define the key relationship instead of just going at key relationship in general. Maybe you want to focus on a friend relationship, your family relationships, your work relationships, something specific. Maybe instead of money management, it's time management, home management, maybe even spring cleaning management. Same thing with professional goals. Maybe you are not in that chapter of your life anymore. Maybe you want to focus on learning goals, creative goals, spring goals, gardening goals, vacation goals, you name it, give it a goal. And you can use that for what you need. And so here are a couple of really good examples. I like the duality component. I am a big fan of duality. You'll hear me that pretty consistently in a lot of the socials that I host. So it's the idea of do something and let go of something. The idea of you want more something and less of something. And same thing with I'm still on the kick of like, there's an action item, but the counter to an action is to rest. You can't just keep going and going and going. We are not the Energizer Bunnies. So if you come up with that action item, definitely think about how you can refresh, recharge, build back up that vitality that we just talked about all last month as you are certainly on a journey to find your authentic self. I feel like that could be absolutely necessary in some of these. And then maybe you're not quite ready to commit, even though we do break up with perfection here. Maybe you have a couple different ideas that you want to work on, or you have some long-term goals. So that's where those sticky notes can come in a lot of handy. Maybe this is your general idea, or maybe it's just, again, I can't help but think, and I know not these people using it as an example, but I also think is like kind of that excellent, almost like euphemism of hiding it. So maybe you are masking your authentic intention behind a quote or something like that. So I thought that was maybe a darker, cleverer way of kind of embracing authenticity this month, as just kind of an interesting way to portray that. Like I said, maybe got a little too deep with that one, but that was the first thing I thought of, especially with this month's theme. And then this kind of moves into the here's what I need, here's what the intention is going to be, here's how I'm going to work on it, and these are going to be the direct habits so that you can start kind of weaving each of these pages together. And then so you can take your intentions, build them directly into a mood tracker and your habit tracker, and then pull those directly into your weekly pages to consider to continue to support your intentions for the particular month. Same thing with another duality. You want to embrace something and release something. And like I said, when in doubt, sticker it out. Because pictures are worth 1,000 words. Maybe it's that motivation that you want. Maybe it's that type of thing that you need. Maybe you haven't quite formulated what you want, but this can be what it is. And this can be the kind of overarching theme for you, because then you can pull each of those ideas into the specific pieces on the next couple pages. And then I love still the love on the right. I love being able to have that moment to take ownership of what you want your month to look like. So this is kind of a manifestation. These are your fortunes. This is how you're going to look into it. I am still trying to like come up with another way to like not make it as kind of fall-ish, but I just still think it's a great idea. They've removed the particular categories and just left it at that, incorporated that. And that's the same thing as you'll see through some of these examples that, again, instead of spiritual health, it's mental health, the home management, you'll see some of those repurposing. And at the same time, just because there are 6 particular areas does not mean all 6 is what you need this particular month. Maybe it is you only want to focus on 3 of these, 4 of these. Maybe you want to kind of completely repurpose. So I would love to hear your thoughts on your intentions. What are things you're going to focus on? Does it tie into your word of the year? Does it tie into your word of the month? Or are you really getting inspiration from this particular month's theme? Or do you have a certain way that you always kind of approach these? Or are you going to try something new? We'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. So now that we have our intentions, we can build how we can support those intentions with our mood tracker and our habit tracker, or however you repurpose those next couple pages. So please turn to page 10 and 11 in your April journal, and we will work on that. So the first one is going to be the mood tracker. And again, we know that there's always a debate of the team circles versus the team not circles. It's too early to count hexagons. Thank you. Had a long week as I'm sitting here counting, but the mood tracker can help you look at type of gathering information. It can look at trends to those type of things. These two memes really helped me. That really, here's why I can't count, because I don't go above two, because I only have two moods, the hee hee and the not hee hee. And then I liked the I'm staying home today. I think I have mood poisoning. So this was my vibe for my mood tracker this month. So thank you. And so with that mood tracker, you can take your tips and tricks. So you can choose 2 to 3 negative feelings, 1 neutral, 2 to 3 positive feelings, and then you can focus on the theme of authenticity. Falling apart, and we're not done yet. Okay. Back to fill in every emotion that came for you that day, or fill in whatever emotion was the strongest. I got to stop watching the chat. You all just perpetuate. So you can also repurpose the mood tracker. I found what was really helpful when I started tracking my mood was that I was kind of putting myself on this roller coaster, because I was embracing kind of the really negative, but also a really positive, or like a really, really strong emotion, or a strong version of it. And then I was going back in and dwelling on it. So I was purposely putting myself on this roller coaster, and I realized I wanted to be a little bit more even keeled. So I picked some that had a little bit more of a neutral tone. So instead of like excited, it was content. Instead of furious, it was annoyed. So that kind of brought me back. But there are ways to repurpose this. Maybe you want to do a daily affirmations. Maybe this is a tracker that's going to help you with your intentions, help you with your journal. I know a couple of other facilitators have used it for anxiety, energy levels, all of those things. So I will come back to these slides, but here are those different moods. And then, because again, it's fitting a circle in a square peg, I like this version just because I like the visual of the emotions that you have. Your calm, cool, collective ones tend to be low energy. And then you've got your high energy, which tend to be the warmer colors. So being able to kind of overlay this, I think it was great. And here again are some of those examples. I am very data driven, and I love the fact that you can incorporate multiple variables to these. Get so excited. So the one kind of bottom right is that they're tracking their emotions and their energy and overlaying those to see if energy is infecting their emotions or vice versa. One at the top is for panic attacks. The other one is, again, feeling all of those emotions throughout the day. Maybe someone wants to track more of your physical care, what activities you're doing, or even, again, some of those mood boosters. So you know you're going to be in your moods, but here are your go-to that are going to help you, especially when we spent quite a bit of time last month looking at vitality. So maybe this is a mood recharge tracker using some of those tools that you have there. And then again, maybe you're on a particular health journey, so it's a food tracker, again, more of that energy, a book tracker, an anxiety tracker, and you can overlay, because what's nice about these is we know that in every data collection, you have a key or a legend. You get to define it. So that's where you get to put the idea of how strong, how is it going to be a range? Is it going to be a color? Is it going to be a symbol? Whatever kind of hits the right spot in your brain to provide that motivation. I saw that someone else maybe had used it to do their intentions tracker. So there are 6 different options. And so you can pull each of those intentions. And so maybe you want to focus on that particular intention for that day. And so you can use that there. So again, you can kind of revisit your intentions. And like, I'm another one of those, like, help with the breadcrumbs, lay those out for you, help yourself. Future you will be thankful that they don't always have to think as critically. Maybe you want to take a page out of Inside Out. and the different bubbles that you have are the bigger ones. That was the strongest emotion, but all the little ones in between. And also being able to highlight, if you're on vacation, the days of the week. Maybe you kind of spike during the work week and have a different, like again, dealing with that authenticity. Maybe you are different during the week than you are on the weekends. And same thing with looking at maybe stress, creativity, kind of overlaying multiple things. Still with the workout, I know spending tracker is usually always a clever idea. And same thing, I like the one at the bottom left of just acknowledging if you had a great day or a tough day, and then realizing that maybe you didn't have as many tough days as you thought. Those just were the ones that stick out the most. And then same thing with even a self-care tracker, you can bring in some of those 7 types of rest or those intentions there as well. So I'm going to give you some time to work on this. I will collect myself and then we'll move to the next tracker. We will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And I feel like it was just a little bit to the inside of, I promise we are professionals, sort of, but not really. Ugh, I knew I woke up in an interesting mood today, and I feel like it just carried through into that. So now that we've established our mood tracker, we are going to flip over to page 11 with the habit tracker. Let's see what sort of tongue twisters the habit tracker is going to bring for us. So the habit tracker is something that I always like to think of. This is something that you want to do every single day. And so for me, I am a creature of habit. My same three will always live on this page rent free forever and ever. And that is move, read, and journal. And then within those, I will add kind of something else. And then I will bring those over to my weekly to find out how much I can actually set aside for this. And so with those particular habits, you can use authenticity as your focus. You can pick a theme. You can, we always recommend finding a balance. What are some of those that you maybe are already inherently doing? And I feel like it becomes one of those really fun things of, while I do continue to put them on my habit tracker, there's just that satisfaction of those are built so much into my day-to-day routine that I don't no longer consider a need to kind of set aside too much time for them, because that's just what I'm going to spend time on during my day. So being able to do that each and every month, I think is great. If you need any inspiration when it comes to habits, I feel like these are great. And then embracing, I think, as Maya just put in the particular themes for that month, the National Poetry Month. So maybe it's read a poem, maybe again it's a write a poem. I have found, like I said, I do read a lot. I predominantly read fiction, but my next kind of go-to are some of those kind of poetry collection books. Read some really, really interesting ones, especially being over here in the UK. It can be really nice. So highly recommend pulling those out, because that's something you can do, read one of those in a day. You can get those from the library, all of those kind of fun things. Always great to have there. And what I do like with the habit tracker is, again, you can incorporate whether these are particular days of the week. Are your weekday habits different than your weekend habits? That's how you can kind of do it. And then again, it's more of you can create your own key, your own legend. Is it a satisfaction appointment? Is how much time you spent there, the tasks you did, or is again just kind of a color fill in the blanks type thing? But I like the one on the left in that there are certain things that you cannot control. So unfortunately, the person on the left ended up with COVID. So their habit tracker looked a little bit different after that. Those habits or activities were not something that they were particularly wanting to do anymore. And that's the same thing anytime I go on vacation or anytime I have people visiting. Habit tracker does not become my priority anymore. Those are just things, like I said, the three things that I want to do every day are already built so much into my day-to-day that it's amazing how much they are incorporated even when I'm on vacation or when I have people there. But being able to give myself that acknowledgement of the grace of, like, it's not that you're not doing this, it's just that you have other priorities or you have other things that you want to focus on. You want to be more present. You want to connect with everything. So I like the idea again of that. And then maybe you want to focus on a particular routine. Maybe again, you only want to do 6 instead of the full 7. And so being able to kind of set it up that way. Excuse me. Again, when I talk about being able to help yourself in your journaling journey, is the one on the left certainly incorporates kind of the journaling habits specifically. They look at the daily affirmations, the daily goals, their daily reflections, daily ritual within the app. They also included a page for their gratitude log, the mood and creativity tracker, their weekly habits and goals. So being able to come back and acknowledge each of those, again, be Hansel and Gretel, put those breadcrumbs out into the forest for yourself. Future self will help you. Same thing with the one on the right. It is Bailey, is one of our other facilitators. And so she's categorized the things that she wants to work on. But then she's defined within that category of what the things that she can do for it. So she's got a list of things for physical care. So when she does the physical care, she can kind of pick one of those things. And a lot of it is, again, stuff that we're already sort of doing. And it's just kind of acknowledging that way. Sometimes you just need a little bit of that break of, I want to sit in my routine a little bit instead of always trying to change it or tweak it or make modifications. I'm a big fan of, there are some situations where just kind of holding on and letting it pass is a good course of action. Yeah, some actions require no action. And same thing with the replenish and the nourish. Those things are already listed there. So you can kind of, again, pick your own adventure based on what particular habit you want to focus on. The other things that you can use this for is a celebration tracker. So maybe again, it becomes the theme of the month, an authenticity tracker. So it becomes less of like tangible things and more of the kind of mental or emotional support behind those. So for example, it's the kind of guilt-free rest. You know, how do you practice that? Maybe it's taking that moment to kind of spend 15 minutes scrolling on your phone. Maybe it's, you know, setting aside 30 minutes to watch a TV show or a YouTube video. You know, you kind of can add that as like a larger thing of what do you, again, back to what do you need? If you're feeling this, therefore I need this. So maybe it's a practice of what do you need? So maybe it's that mental check-in that becomes a habit and an activity that you do. And then iconography, I am a big fan, visually speaking. So I always love incorporating the different bucket lists. You'll see these across a lot of my socials. But here are the two particular April bucket list items. So I always recommend adding something fun, something different. And so again, these may be a little bit specific. I would use these probably more for my weekly setups, but I always now include a bucket list item or a, you know, monthly bucket list item. So I have an April bucket list as one of my habit and activity trackers, and I will pull one of these because so much of those I think are already incorporated into the routine. And that's where I'm starting to find that I'm quite content with my routine because it's becoming so functional and so adaptable. And I think that's really always been my end goal. How do I incorporate all these things without having to kind of reinvent the wheel each and every time? So I am going to give you all some time to work on this, finish up all the pages, and we will see you soon for the closeout of this session. See you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And can you believe we have reached the end? Huh, made it through. Dignity intact, maybe only a little embarrassed, but that's perfectly fine. If you want to continue the conversation in the Silk and Sonder app, we would love to see any of your examples. If you want to share, you guys provide such amazing inspiration, as you see at all the examples that we have there. And also, I feel like that's also where I have recently been kind of getting the gist of what people are feeling, what people are thinking, and that's how I've kind of tailored some of my socials then to kind of talk about those. So hopefully, again, if you are incorporating the app into your day-to-day journaling, like I said, we do try to pick up on some of those things so that we can be relevant in these socials. As always, we do have some of these really great products that are out. The 24/7 coach known as Jenny. You'll see some of the references there. It's still in beta mode, so you can reach out to concierge at silkandsonder.com. We'll also be having a couple other live demonstrations for that upcoming. Same thing with if you want to start working and incorporating the digital version of the journal, you have the ability to include that. You don't have to pick one or the other when it comes to the in your hands journal versus the digital, but if that's something you're interested in, you can reach out to hello@silkandsonder.com to start incorporating that as well. This is going to be a copy of my playlist. I will include the Spotify link in there as well. But as always, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your authenticity and honesty in these socials. Like I said, they make me so happy, even when I make a fool of myself. But I am so excited. So excited to have set up the month of April with each and every one of you. We hope to see you at future events. We've got the weekly set up later today where Maya and I are switching spots. So you'll get to see her on camera, her lovely face, her lovely voice, and I will be sitting in the chat. But as always, we are so glad that you came. We're so glad that you set aside this time for yourself. And hopefully you are ready for the month of April. It's coming. It'll be here next week. Can you believe it? And when we were talking about memories that were brought up, like I said, my grandma has popped into my head recently. So this last song, I feel like I play often, but I don't know what it is. It always just reminds me of her. And that's how we're going to close. So hope to see you at a future event, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.